Well, so Wednesday afternoon is here. Hello there, good afternoon, and welcome to The Pulse. We are coming to you live from our studios here in Accra. You can also get us on digital terrestrial TV because we are free to air on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144. This is JoyNews, independent, fearless and credible journalism. This afternoon on The Pulse, the Attorney General is pushing for a by-election in the Asin North constituency following the latest Supreme Court ruling which officially prevents James Gyakye Quayson from performing parliamentary duties.
The court has ruled, given a judgment determining the status of the gentleman as not qualified to have stood for election and had actually cancelled the election conducted in the Asin North constituency.
There's actually more on this. We'll explore the implication of this ruling, which leaves the minority short of one member on the floor of the House. This afternoon as well, the National Health Insurance Authority is assuring service providers of timely payment of claims following reports of an imminent withdrawal of their services. This afternoon, we hear from the management of the health scheme on what is being done to sustain NHIS.
I don't care what anybody says, it's one of the best designed schemes, health insurance schemes in the world. However, as typically faces Ghana, we set up a good plan and then we don't follow our own plan.
On NHIS shortly, and Ghana's inflation hit a record high of more than 19%, with transport and food inflation all recording rates more than 22%. We have details for you here on The Pulse. My name is Blessed Sogah. The Pulse is always brought to you by Global Communities Digni Lu, affordable, safe sanitation. This afternoon as well, we are streaming live on YouTube and all of our social media handles. It's JoyNews on TV. Feel free to join us and also tweet at us with the hashtag The Pulse. My personal handle is at Blessed Sogah. Thanks for choosing us. And this afternoon, all the action is from the Supreme Court. The Attorney General, Godfrey Adeboadami, says nothing stops the Electoral Commission from declaring the Asin North parliamentary seat vacant. His comments comes in the wake of a Supreme Court ruling that restrains James Gyakye Quayson, the Member of Parliament, he used to be the Member of Parliament, from performing the parliamentary duties. Now, a Cape Coast High Court in July 2021 nullified the election of Mr. Quayson after it found that he owed allegiance to Canada at the time of filing his nomination forms to contest the polls. Michael Ankoma Nimfa, a resident of the constituency who filed this election petition in January 2022, initiated another action at the Supreme Court asking it to enforce this High Court judgment. The court today agreed with him on the matter. Court correspondent Joseph Akable has the rest of the story.
So Supreme Court judges Jones Doche, Mariam Owusu, Mensa Bonsu, Gertrude Tokonu, and Yoni Kulendi took the view that the MP should be restrained from performing parliamentary duties, while the other judges, Nene Amegacha and Agnes Doji, disagreed with that majority decision. The court said that the MP should no longer perform parliamentary duties or show up in Parliament or present himself as Member of Parliament for Asin North. The Attorney General believes this decision is in the right direction.
And I think that there ought to be even application of the law. There ought to be an equal application of the law. The same fate befell Adamu Dramani Sakande. He was not qualified at the time that nominations were opened, and we don't know what happened to him. He was subsequently declared ineligible, and for that matter, his seat was taken away. So there ought to be even application of the law. If it happened to Adamu Dramani Sakande of the MPP, yes, it also has to happen to the gentleman of the NDC who has also fallen foul of the same law. It means that as the High Court that had earlier on held, the seat for me, the people of Asin North will not be represented. And I think that for all these legal gymnastics that have been employed by the lawyers for Asin North, perhaps a by-election should have been conducted long ago. And I, in my view, think that there should even nothing in the way of the Electoral Commission to declare the seat vacant. The High Court has ruled, given a judgment determining the status of the gentleman as not qualified to have stood for election and had actually cancelled the election conducted in the Asin North constituency. and the Court of Appeal subsequently struck out his appeal for non-compliance with the rules of the Court of Appeal. So there's no appeal pending. And I think the way is clear. But of course, the Supreme Court has ordered an expedited hearing and determination of this matter. Yes, I believe that the Supreme Court hearing definitely will also affirm all the principles of law that I have indicated had early on been established by the courts of Ghana.
A member of the NDC legal team, Baba Jamal, disagrees.
The Supreme Court has given its ruling, but we vehemently disagree with their position. I think that it is a sad day for all of us. That if what it means is that Asenoff is also not going to have representation in Parliament for as long as this case lasts. That is a sad situation. Because there are precedents in this country. We all remember the case in Ayawaso, West Wagon, where the lady was allowed to stay in Parliament.
Frank Davis, however, believes that the decision is a step in the right direction.
The right of representation is not a structure by itself. The right of representation is steeped in law. You can't have an illegible person running around as a member of Parliament for a constituency when he is not. It obviously leads to a mutilation of the sovereign will of the people of Asenoff. They are better off now without someone who is parading as a member of Parliament whilst he is not, whilst we await the decision of this court. The mere fact that they don't have to quote a member of Parliament at this time does not, in any event, strip them of what they are entitled to as citizens of this country. At any particular point in time, there will be a needed representation from the New Patriotic Party for the Asin North constituency.
This means that for now, the people of Asin North will be without a member of Parliament till the Supreme Court determines the substantive matter that has been filed. For JoyNews from the Supreme Court, my name is Joseph Akable.
Well, in fact, this is just the beginning of the case. Let's cross over now to the Asin North constituency itself in the central region for some reactions by constituents who are also learning of the Supreme Court's ruling. Correspondent Richard Kujonyako joins us on Zoom with more. Richard, I'm sure that you've been around town. What reactions are you getting on this latest ruling by the court?
Well, so the reactions are mixed, while others are saying that they are doing things deliberately to take their member of Parliament from Parliament. Others are also saying that, well, it serves him right, he should have done the right thing. So I moved to the constituency, spoke with market women, spoke with traders, spoke with the party people, the NDC, MPP. They all have different versions of their story. And so they are saying for the NDC in the constituency, they say that they should bring it on. If it is the by-election that they want, they will beat the MPP anytime that the by-election is declared. For the MPP, they feel that, well, they've been vindicated because the man did not use the right processes to get to Parliament, and so they will do everything possible to unseat him once the by-election is declared in that particular constituency.
Jana mosquito ekano debia in the crisis here wo mo bra ne yento abasisi anade ye wo hwe ba bia wo mo beda enti ye ya ready say ye twen omo ye nso omo da kumpoda ye ne wo mo beko sania wo mo call ye call 2020 election na wo mo gina bonten na wo mo etu mfuturo na wo mo twa adapa entoaba enti wo man kasa wo adwuma wo mo aye no wo krom hia no ana be kire omo say nkrofo nto abama omo mabubu nkrofo store dan ama nipa fama de bade ewu no compensation up to date muntumi de bade ensi dan no enfema omo na mo sori a obi a wa ba obebua no so a mo pese mo be man pa no obede obebua minua o man be na yetimi your man be na yetimi CCI. People are taking this Ghana as their own bona fide property, especially our judicial service. Osha Shedia or mine since echo or mine or my fan say or bona fide property. Eti yebese yenu anuma mo ye NDC for mo ye NDC for papa ni who don't know. Sa nwama echo sunya no se eba se ye kwa koto ababi ma. Mo nyina mo be support NDC because NDC ena ama asin off anom aye asin off na Akufo-Addo ne nkrof
Joko si na so mo mpeno ye de break asin e de dare ha ye nya ye panikum ye mpo bia de se obi obebe bia no amwa ya e bi se ye tumi nkodi obi ati na de bia bleku ya ye dwadi ye di nyina aye basa ye hunu so nti Joko si ono ana baba boa ye asin off hande ono ana ye peno okura dua ye mpo bia wa ha ono ana ye pe
mara na yɛka masɛm sabam no kase sɛ the court de ruling naba no we kyerɛ kamema ne ka bi the moon faso a yɛmene ne wo yɛdi ho mfaso nti we aba no me de me sɛ atem papa fi sɛ me am we sɛ obi kɔwia na ade na obi kyi no hu no kadea na sɛ mara ne gya adwuma saa so bi me kɔwia obi bɔɔde na yɛkyi me a obi hu a ɛnya ne de abatum betum hu na waka no akyerɛkyerɛ mu na mara na yɛ adwuma nti me de court na se bebre we nya tokwasɛm ya mai hu yɛte yɛ ho ase wo nua no memso nua no me de make person make kan sɛ ɛyɛ sa basa fi sɛ amasa nke hu nyankopɔ no munyam nti me gyina mas kasa fide kɛseɛ so ma do bibia ase na ka sɛ we aban kɔtɔ ba beda ne mu yɛ fɛ sɛ electoral commission ɔde asɛm foforo hyɛ foforo bɛba
aw ba kurum so wɔn sɛ kurum ayɛ din ntɔkɔ bi anim fi sɛ yɛ mmra ɛna yɛde yɛ adwuma we ebi asipan sɛ wɔbɛkae abusa kandia esi wɔn abrɛ so twena ma ne kwada mu mpo enti sɛ we esi no nya afi na mmra no ɛyɛ adwuma because a lawyer fo ya na ɔmote hɔ a agyaji fo ya na ɔmote hɔ a wɔn bua aba ɛyɛ mmre bi a ɛto ya ɛkɔyɛ pinchi a MPP de kopie court wɔn kuro ya ne tena asam no so wɔn bia no deɛ na ɛyɛ sisi anso ankɔfo kuro ya nso na wɔmote hɔ a wɔn enti mmra deɛ ɛyɛ mmra a sɛ sɛ yɛde yɛ adwuma kuro a anasa ɔman a mmre nimu no kuro no ɔman no ɛnyɛ ɔman pa enti yɛde kopɔn ase sɛ ɛnɛ yi bibia akɔda din a yɛsan abeto abanfo mesre me nuanom obia nka na koma ntu ne yam na yɛ nyinaa no enka mom na yɛnyɛ na yɛ ne yɛ a ɔman no ɛna edi ho mfaso na mente me ho ase makɔtwe sekan me kasa tie we ma yɛse no ɛmfa mfaso bia amrɛ na mom sɛ yankopɔn yɛ adom na electoral commission ɛsan de ɛda foforo ba sɛ yɛnto aba yɛ nyinaa akɔka bom ne yɛto no de obɛnwini no ɛno ase yɛpɛ mpuntuo wɔ asen of na yɛde akɔyɛ.
And these are the reactions we're getting from the Asin North constituency. In fact, many of you may have challenges understanding what exactly these persons have been saying in the local dialect. Richard Kojo Nyako is still with us on Zoom. Richard, so break it down for us, the reactions we're getting and what simply the residents have been saying in the local dialect.
So we take the first two people, and they are saying that it is only Joe Kwesin they know. The man came all the way from Canada to help them. If they look at their constituency, the previous MPs that came never helped them, but they have looked at the works of Mr. Joe Kwesin in the constituency, and they feel that he's the right person to help the constituency, and so they don't know anybody apart from Joe Kwesin, and so should the Electoral Commission declare that the seat is vacant and there is a by-election, they don't know anybody other than Joe Kwesin, and so that is what they are saying. The other two are also using the law. They say that it is victory for the law and democracy because if someone steals something from the market and the person would be arrested and put before court, it's the same law that has been applied here. And so people should stop being emotional, right? Because it was used in the case of Adamu Dramani Sakandi, and so it is the same law that is enforced now. And so these are the reactions from the constituency. Right.
I'm grateful, and Richard will continue to keep an eye on the constituency and bring you minute by minute update on what's happening. In fact, we're still watching the story, but what exactly are the implications of this Supreme Court ruling, and particularly when we know that the minority in Parliament may lose one of their members, which will mean that there will be a tilt, obviously, in Parliament as we speak. No more a hang situation there right now. But there's one man whose judgment was also given recently that dwells on the issue of quorum and the numbers in the House. Justice Abdullah is a private legal practitioner. He's joining us live Zoom to take his thoughts on this matter and some other issues that are developing on this. Justice, thank you for making some time for us here on The Pulse. So first of all, your impression about the ruling that we're getting from the Supreme Court on this matter.
The difficulty with this ruling, I think this was expected naturally. considering the line of decisions that have greeted the election, in fact, the petition against the Asin North MP. The moment the High Court gave the decision it gave by throwing him out, I was hoping that they pursued vigorously the issue of the appeal, but unfortunately, it looks like they had to leave the appeal unprosecuted, which is why it got thrown out. Now, the moment your appeal gets thrown out, it literally makes the rest of their applications that are pending very light to sustain any further activity going forward. And so, particularly when the Supreme Court once again threw out the issue of the reference for determination as to as to the meaning of and the intentment of the Constitution when it says that when in dealing with the period of time that a person really loses his nationality or gains his nationality.
Right.
And for me, that the moment that was off, it for me appeared to be what has become known as the straw that broke the camel's back.
Right, but many experts say that this was predicted long time ago, and that what we need now may be a by-election. You agree with that?
A by-election will be very difficult, considering that the case has it's not exhausted at this moment. For a by-election to be conducted, I think that would also bring in further serious litigations, because I am very sure that I think that there's still some processes pending before the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court, and until those ones are exhausted, until there's a finality, it will be very difficult for the Electoral Commission to go ahead and declare the seat vacant.
But I guess it's a matter of locals right now.
Communication.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I guess it's a matter of locals as we speak, because, and sorry for cutting through, we've had the Attorney General indicate that as of this moment, nothing bars the Electoral Commission from going ahead and declaring the seat vacant, and then we could have a by-election. Is it as simple as that?
I disagree, because the Electoral Commission would have to confer with Parliament to confirm whether or not that seat has been declared vacant. If those communications would have to be done before the Electoral Commission can make those pronouncements. The Electoral Commission does not work in a vacuum, and neither does it work with reports from media houses. It doesn't work that way. There have to be appropriate processes followed before the seat can be declared vacant. And I do not think that, as of this moment, the Speaker would give that information for the Electoral Commission to declare the seat.
You're doubting.
There must be a formal communication.
Right. So what you're telling us is that you're doubting
there must be that formal communication, and the Speaker will not take that decision if there's even a single application that has the potential of holding the Assembly seat intact for the NDC.
But in all honesty, the point is, how far could the NDC and by extension James Gyakye Quayson go? Particularly when we know this is the apex court we are talking about. Yes, indeed, the law does not bar them from varying from their initial rulings, but some would say that's unlikely given what we're seeing today.
Indeed, it's unlikely that the decisions will change. There is no turning back, for as I'm concerned. I think it's in his favor. It's very difficult, if not impossible, considering the trajectory of the case. But that is not to say that the NDC will be given that easily. I do not think they will do that. And I remember hearing Baba Jamal making mention of the Judge Amon's case in 1996. And that's Ayawaso West Walgon,
right,
where Judge Amon won the election. But the NDC candidate was given the right to be in Parliament. And they fought for her to stay on for the entire duration of the life of that Parliament. I think that was the fourth Parliament, the third Parliament. They fought for him, for the lady to stay on throughout. Even though eventually Judge Amon was declared the winner of the elections, he never had the opportunity to stay in Parliament for even a day. And I think this is likely to be one of such cases that the two parties are likely to fight tooth and nail to ensure that even if the member of Parliament will come back to Parliament, even if, which is an unlikely situation, it will be such that it can only happen after the life of this parliament. And so, guaranteed, we can take it for granted that NDC would remain, as far as this particular seat is concerned, 136 going forward.
But I guess this is where the integrity, and this may be political, you feel free to comment on it. This is where the integrity of the speaker will be tested, isn't it? Particularly when he stated on the floor of the House that exhaust all the legal means. Now we have a ruling, and it's clear. All that's left is that the speaker would have to declare the seats vacant. Are you expecting that from the speaker?
I don't expect that from the speaker, taking into consideration the 3 MPs that have been referred to the Privileges Committee. Those members of parliament all belong to the MPP side. And it took well over 2 months before a reference was made. In fact, but for that reference made by the speaker, no step was taken on this matter, which literally meant that those persons, considering on the face of the reference that was made by the speaker, it's obvious that they've gone way beyond the 15-day rule, but they still remain in the books of parliament as members of parliament, which is something that is a bit very unusual. As far as the Constitution is concerned, that's clearly unusual, but that is what is presently facing us. And so, judging the speaker from that stand, I am of the strongest opinion that he's likely not to take a decision on this one as well until the entire processes are exhausted.
And let's not forget as well that the principal legal advisor of government, and not just government, but also the state, is the Attorney General. If the Attorney General writes to the Electoral Commission, at least we know constitutionally no one can interfere with the activities of the Electoral Commission. But if the Attorney General gives the legal opinion that a by-election could be organized in the area, would you advise the Electoral Commission to go ahead and organize an election within the next few days?
First of all, such an advice could only go to the government and not to the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission doesn't take an advice directly from the Attorney General, unless the Electoral Commission itself make reference to the Attorney General for a legal opinion, in which case then they will be the Attorney General will be in a position to offer an opinion. Otherwise, it is likely not to happen that way. Second, even if the Attorney General makes such an advice to the Electoral Commission, what you are likely to face is that the EC will still have to go back to Parliament, find out and confirm whether indeed that seat has been declared vacant before they can take any further step. Until that communication also comes from the office of the Speaker, there will still be that hurdle that ought to be cleared. And it will take more than a phone call or a communication between the AG and the Speaker's office for that to be resolved. I think it will take a lot.
Yeah, but I guess this is where the issue of separation of powers could also come through. Can the EC go ahead, giving its constitutional powers, without recourse to the Speaker of Parliament? And I guess that's where the big question is, knowing that the declaration by the Supreme Court today stands to be law.
Yeah, the declaration stands to be law, but the declaration of today only holds the member of parliament at bay, not step in parliament. That can be enforced. That he will not be able to go there. Once this communication and once the judgment is communicated to the Speaker's office, that member of parliament cannot step into the House of Parliament. That will be also contempt of the court, and Parliament could also hold in contempt of itself. And so, to that extent, as for going to Parliament, he cannot go there. But as to whether that is capable of depriving him of becoming a member of Parliament is a question that cannot be answered simply by this judgment.
Interesting. Very shortly, we'll be speaking to the counsel who argued the case out for James Achikwesing. He'll be making some remarks on this matter shortly. But I also want to pick your thoughts on the general implications as well. There's also the issue about quorum in Parliament. Here's what we know, that at the time the controversial subject of the e-levy was being considered, there were divided opinions as to whether or not the quorum should have been 137 or 138. Given what we have now from the Supreme Court, will it go retrospect and will it take effect, given the fact that the quorum would now have to be 137 and not 138?
No, it remains that the quorum would be 138. And this is so because, first of all, this seat remains on a seat for the NDC, unless, of course, like there is no pending application. Because remember, and I'm saying all these because it's a bit complicated, and you need to understand the nuances. First, even though the High Court has declared the seat vacant and literally dismissed the Member of Parliament, the Member of Parliament, as I understand, still has applications pending. The substantive appeal also, the substantive appeal was struck out and for want of prosecution. And I understand, if I stand corrected, I understand that they filed for relistement. If it is not accurate, then literally, if there's nothing pending, then that seat remains vacant. And in which case, now we have 274 members of Parliament. But the problem with this number is that it is still not half of members of Parliament, because the Constitution knows the members of Parliament, and the number is 275. So the absence or the presence of the additional member, whether his seat is declared vacant or otherwise, does not reduce the number of the numbers in Parliament. It only reduces the number of members of Parliament, but not the number of parliamentary seats that we have available. So until the seats are reduced, not the persons, until the seats are reduced, we still have 275 members of Parliament. And so we must still cross the 138 bridge in order to be able to form a quorum.
But if you listen to the Deputy Majority Leader, Apenyo Markin, he talks about the fact that at the time, for instance, the electronic transactions levy was being considered in Parliament, we didn't have a full complement of 275 MPs. You've heard that argument from him as well.
No, what you're not getting is that the law as of today is that our members of Parliament is made of 275 members. If a member is removed, it does not change that. If a member is removed, it only means that that seat has to be refilled. And so if that seat is not filled, it does not reduce the number of parliamentarians. It only takes away that person from it. And so that person still has to be, so technically that seat is still available to be occupied. And so you still need to cross 127. So 127 still remains the number of members of Parliament. And so notwithstanding the fact that 2, 3, 4, or even 10 people have been dismissed for some reasons, it doesn't reduce the number of our Parliament to that less number. That is, let's say, 265. It does not reduce it to 265. It still remains 275. So those seats would have to be filled. And so until that is done, you still, at every point in time, have to cross the constitutional threshold of having at least 138 numbers present in Parliament in order to be able to take a decision, in order for you to be able to take a decision going forward, in line with Justice Abdullahi and Attorney General.
So what's the way out for James Gyakye Quayson as we speak? What would be that perfect way out for him?
I believe that he has competent lawyers. He has to properly advise him. I may not have the entire facts and second opinion on the way forward for him. However, I think I know for a fact, and from the conduct of the state, that they will be coming after him on the criminal charges, similar to what happened in the Adamu Sakandi's case. And so I would recommend strongly that he braces himself up for whatever will come forward from the state by way of criminal summons.
All right, then.
If it hasn't commenced already.
And I'm grateful that you've been able to spend some time with us. Justice Abdullahi, legal practitioner, also very famous for the recent quorum ruling by the Supreme Court. But there's one man who was at the center of this in court as well, who we just saw on our screens, Baba Jamal, one of the members of the National Democratic Congress, who has been advocating for the MP to hold himself out. He was in court today and joins us on the telephone lines now. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. So, is it over for your client?
Far from over. Very, very far from over. The Supreme Court's decision today is a sad day for our democracy. Sad day because I am surprised that the Supreme Court, knowing very well that there are substantive issues going on in the court, even in its own conclusion, it stated that the substantive case, which is about interpreting Article 94(2)(a), is before them. And also knowing that we have filed to relist the appeal processes at the appeals court, will go ahead and grant this injunction, denying the people of Aseno the opportunity to be represented in Parliament. I find it very, very sad.
I mean, you are a lawyer, and you've seen many of such cases being dealt with in a like manner. And I'm sure most of your colleagues will also attest to the fact that when there's a judgment, that judgment ought to be enforced first. James Zachukwueze earlier last year was declared by a high court as someone who cannot hold himself out as member of parliament for the area.
No, listen.
Right.
Hello?
Yes, I'm with you, sir.
No, you see, listen, this is the most important thing. We need to understand the processes of our judicial system. The judicial system has indicated or given us the levels at which some particular cases end. When it comes to parliamentary challenge, it ends at the appeals court. As we talk now, the substantive appeal on the decision of the Cape Coast High Court has not been heard. And for that matter, nobody can claim that there is a conclusive position on the issue about the position of the Aseno.
But Jamal, what should be, and I'm taking you on this point, particularly because I know you're vexed with the matters and you very well understand what happens in the courts. What should be made of, for instance, the High Court ruling that was made in Cape Coast last year? What should be made of it, particularly when we know the appeal case has not been heard?
A judgment was made. Hello?
Yes, I'm with you.
A judgment was made, and the judgment has been appealed again.
That will not negate the ruling
now listen,
or the judgment of the court, you agree?
You can allow me to flow. You
yes,
understand
precisely.
Where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Because if the judgment has been given by the Cape Coast High Court, and it has been appealed, but there is, at the appeals court, there was an additional appeal position that was canvassed. That was canvassed even at the High Court, where we asked for a referral of Article 94(2)(a) to the Supreme Court for interpretation when it comes to the issue of allegiance and all those things. The Supreme Court, the High Court judge, disagreed with us. And at that point, the lawyers for Mr. Nifa, Frank Davis, and his team, they opposed our decision to ask for a referral to the Supreme Court for interpretation. They opposed it. We went to the appeals court. They still opposed it. Now, then we go to the Supreme Court because the appeals court take a decision to stack out our case and for lack of compliance or whatever. So we filed a certiorari to cite out that case. Then they now turn around, go and file a writ for interpretation, something they have opposed at the High Court level, at the appeals court level. They go to the High Court to file a writ for interpretation on the same two 94-2A, and then filed an injunction that the MP should be injuncted. What we are saying is that in Techiman South, even though it's a high court, when we filed for injunction against the MP for Techiman South, the judge, the court was of the view, and I think that it was a far better position, was of the view that by injuncting that MP, you are denying the people of Techiman South representation in Parliament. So it is better to keep the candidate there or the MP there until the final determination of the case. And this is in line with the decisions of the court, taking it from Teresa Tego's time since 1996 all the way down. So courts have been reluctant to injunct MPs when it comes to their representation in Parliament because the people's representation is very, very paramount. That's why we are surprised that the Supreme Court will go ahead and claim that there's a pending case before them and go ahead to injunct the MP. So it means that for now, what we need to understand is that the seat has not been declared vacant. No. The seat, the MP has just been injuncted. If you are injuncted, it does not mean that you have been hurt. You have been kicked out completely. It does not mean that way. What it means is that for now, you can't hold yourself up as an MP or you can attend on Parliament. But there are substantive cases that are before both the Appeals Court and the Supreme Court. But we thought that we were of the view that the Supreme Court would have been consistent with the various decisions of various high courts.
Right.
When they always make sure that they keep representation in Parliament for the people before, but not to injunct the people and deny.
But Baba Jamal, in all of this, right? In all of this, and some are being very blunt with you to tell you that without prejudice to the case that's before the court, that put your activities in order, try and campaign because a by-election is imminent. What do you say to such people who say, there's no chance of success for the NDC at this time?
Today's decision at the Supreme Court was 5-2. That alone tells you that there is some chance of success when we go ahead. Do you understand? It was not unanimous. It was 5-2. So it means that there is some, at least 2 out of the 7, might have agreed with us, because we have not seen the full judgment, might have agreed with us that our position is the right position. Do you understand?
Right.
So if everybody is talking about saying that we should just prepare for by-election, whatever it is, it is now has to go through the process of even going to Parliament, from Parliament to EC, before even whatever will happen to happen. But for now, we are going to take the necessary steps that we should take as lawyers. And of course, our lead team, Mr. Chachitikata, has made it clear that he always wants to exhaust processes and ensure that the right things are done.
So tell us about the processes. Tell us about the processes. What's next? What's the NDC doing?
For now, the team is here to meet and to take those decisions. But what I'm saying is that we want to ensure it's not about going and maybe losing.
But you were in court today. So judging from what's transpired in court, are you likely to contest that decision again?
What I can tell you is that we don't agree with the decision. I can tell you now is that we don't agree with the decision. And what I also tell you is that we think that it is a sad day for democracy. It is not the best for our democracy. It now follows that a lot of high courts now taking clue from the Supreme Court can go ahead and even injunct people before they enter Parliament.
Right.
You see, and that is not good for our democracy.
Okay.
As we talk now,
some are saying, and because we don't have all of the time, let's try and touch on all of the matters. For instance, the argument is that you have an opportunity to tackle or to correct the wrong in Parliament, what you deem as wrong in Parliament. The question about the Speaker not declaring the seats vacant. What would you suggest in this case? Because the Speaker himself has given an assurance that, I'll go ahead and declare the seats vacant if we have a ruling from the Supreme Court, for instance.
that would be for the Speaker to satisfy himself that there is no any case pending against the MP. That is for the Speaker to.
But what would you advise the Speaker?
As it stands now, I know that there are two substantive matters one before the Supreme Court and one before the High Court, and for that matter, it is not conclusive for anybody to act and say that seat should be vacant.
So you are invariably, and I'm sorry for cutting through.
Which you can declare the seat vacant has been appealed against, and it has been relisted at the appeals court.
Invariably, you're asking the Speaker not to declare the seat vacant.
It's not that I'm asking the Speaker. I'm saying that it is for the Speaker to satisfy himself that there are no issues about or pending matters in respect of the agnostic. If he satisfies himself and think that it is the right thing to do, it is his decision to take. But in our opinion, it will be taking a hasty decision by declaring that seat vacant when the order or the judgment from the Cape Coast Court has been appealed against and relisted at the appeals court, and there's also the matter of interpretation of Article 94(2)(a), on which some of the part of the judgment the court based its decision on.
Baba Jamal, you're a known member of Parliament. I mean, a known member of the National Democratic Congress. There's no need to be pretending about this. You know the Speaker too well. The party, rank and file, would obviously be expecting something from the Speaker, someone who belongs to your party as well. Do you feel that
he belongs to our party? He belongs to our party, but he presided to pass the.
Let's not take the politics away from this.
No, it tells you that he's impartial because he is a member of our party.
Precisely. I'm not saying you should tie the hands of the Speaker. I'm just asking, for instance, what you would advise that the NDC do about this. Would you consider talking to the Speaker about this?
I've already told you my position that it is for the Speaker to satisfy himself. But in our opinion, it is clear that it will be a hasty decision to go ahead and declare the seat vacant when you are aware, when it is obvious, when it is clear, and even the Supreme Court decision itself has confirmed that there is a substantive case of interpretation before it. And also, there is an appeal against the decision of which. Now, which decision are we talking about? The decision I'm talking about is a decision from Cape Coast High Court. Is that not it? If it is a decision from Cape Coast High Court, that decision, there is a listment of that appeal, and we are yet to move that motion. So there is some form of appeal against that. Now, that decision also quoted part of Article 94(2)(a), and that is what is now before the Supreme Court. So every reasonable person you should expect, that will satisfy himself that all these cases have been dealt with before you take any step to declare the seat vacant. So not to say I'm advising the Speaker or telling him what to do. In our opinion, there are still cases to be dealt with, and they should not, therefore that should stop them from declaring the seat vacant.
But Baba Jamal, we need to go in all of this in just a minute. We know that the person at the center of this case is James Gyakye himself. In fact, he's your client, and obviously you would be engaging him on the way forward. Have you spoken to him after court today? And what sense are you getting from him? Is he opting for...
He was not in court today. And I have not had the opportunity since I left court to meet with him. But as usual, and as I know him, he's a strong person, a fine gentleman who is taking everything in his stride. He knows he has not done anything wrong. He knows he genuinely renounced his Canadian citizenship. So he knows he has a clean hand. And he still believes in the people of Ascend North, that they genuinely voted for him. He is the right person to represent them in Parliament. So I can assure you that he is in high spirit, and together with him, we'll fight this thing to its logical conclusion.
Okay, then. We'll see about that. Baba Jamal, thank you for your time. He's a member of the NDC. legal team. There's more in politics for you because we can now take you to the Ashanti region, where the Council of Elders of the New Patriotic Party claims the party's stronghold has weakened due to the failure of the regional executives there to respect the structures of the party. The recent NPP election for polling station executives was actually characterized by conflicts and controversies in some constituencies in the Ashanti region. The regional party office is presently locked up, affecting administrative operations.
The Ashanti Regional NPP party office is presently locked up, affecting administrative operations. In April last year, landlady of the rented party office at Kofum in Kumasi moved in to lock up the office over alleged failure of the NPP to renew rent. The office was later opened after talks between the interest parties, but the facility has been locked once again with no immediate known reasons. Chairman of the Council of Elders, Reverend Mark Edujemfi, says it has been difficult for party members to put their grievances before leadership in the region. He says the regional executives have over the years failed to involve the council in party issues. Reverend Edujemfe is blaming the leadership executives for the recent upsurge in internal wrangling and factions within the party.
Everybody, this is an open secret. Everybody knows that we are having a problem to have administrative setup. You know, I'm speaking like this. Not so many people can speak like the way I'm speaking, because why? I'm 83 years old. I don't want post. I don't want anything. I just love the party. So I'm saying this, and people may not like it. Some people may not like it. I couldn't care less. You know, I just want all these youth that are coming to know that we have to do the right things. Otherwise, the consequences, we will not like it. What we need to do now is to get back to the structures of the party in Ashanti region. If we start from there, and I can assure you, the next time I speak to you like we are doing now, you find peace and harmony and tranquility within the party.
According to Reverend Edujemfi, the elders are working assiduously to resolve all internal issues inhibiting the smooth running of the party. He says though they are not being paid, they have to intervene for the love of the party.
So far as they are concerned, they are doing their work. But I'm not happy. I'm not happy. Because they're supposed to, you know, allow us to do our bit. Part of the structures is for the Council of Elders to deal with the issues affecting members all over the country, all over Ashanti region. But people come here. This place is supposed to be my working place. Some come to my house. They don't even know where to go to. Council of Elders, what do? We're supposed to solve all the issues within the party. The first time we have been given that chance is this time, only this time. All the years. Yesterday somebody asked me this question, same question. He said, where were you before all these things started? Nobody invited me to do anything. But we want to tell listeners that from now on, you will hear from me.
Meanwhile, the former presiding member of the Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly, Abraham Bwedi, has described the regional executives as failures and undeserving to retain their positions.
And you're still watching The Pulse here on the Joy News channel. Still to come, we'll talk about Ghana's inflation, which has hit a record high of more than 19%. We'll break down all of the figures for you right here on The Pulse. Stay with us. We'll return shortly. And you're welcome back to The Pulse. Now, Ghana's inflation has hit a record high of more than 19%, with transport and food inflation all recording rates of more than 22%. Here's government statistician Professor Samuel Kobina announcing details of this.
The highlights for CPI and rate of inflation for the month of March 2022 as follows. Year-on-year inflation for the month of March 2022 stood at 19.4% relative to the 15.7% that was recorded for the month of February 2022. This literally means that between the month of March 2021 and March 2022, prices of goods and services on a year-on-year basis went up by 19.4%. On a month-on-month basis, that is between February 2022 and March 2022, inflation stood at 4.0%, indicating that within that month period, that is February and March 2022, prices of goods and services went up by 4.0%. Food inflation continued to maintain its dominance over non-food inflation. Indeed, it has deepened its dominance over non-food inflation, as food inflation stood at 22.4% relative to non-food inflation 17.0%. On a month-on-month basis, the difference between food inflation and non-food inflation was relatively smaller, as food inflation stood at 4.5% relative to 3.7% that was recorded for non-food inflation. We have seen a reversal of the dominance of housing, water, electricity, and gas, as transport in several months has recorded the highest rate of inflation of 27.6%, followed by food 22.4%, and housing, water, electricity, and gas 21.4%. The contribution of food, non-alcoholic beverages on overall inflation increased by 2.0%, and it must be recorded that the contribution of transport recorded a much higher increase relative to food and non-alcoholic beverages, as its increase was 2.6 percentage points. The gap between locally produced items and imported items have been reduced, although locally produced items continue to maintain its dominance of 20.0 inflation for the month of March 2022 and 17.3 for imported items for the month of March 2022. Bronco-Ahafo region recorded the highest inflation of 23.1%, and Upper East region the lowest inflation of 12.5%, showing a stark variation across the administrative regions. Thank you.
Well, so the trend is what we need to break down for you. Isaac Ofeje is with our research desk, joins us now for some breakdown of the figures. So, Isaac, let's start from the beginning. Where did we get to this point of crossing the single digit, and then we moved into the
8% plus or minus 2.
Precisely. So break
now we are doing 19.4.
That's where we are.
4%. Right. So it means we've doubled, from our target. But this started right from December 2021, where we started increasing our inflation rate from 12.6 to 13.6% in January 2022. Right. And then just in February, we were around 15.7%, and now in March, 19.4%.
And it appears that the projection is we may go even above this mark that we have.
So yesterday we were talking about, the World Bank, IMF projecting that, developing countries like ourselves, we'll be facing, food inflation. We are likely to feel the pinch more because we spend more than 40% of our income on food. So if you're having this Ukraine and Russia tensions, then it means that you're going to feel the pinch. But
so let's talk about the factors driving this, because we need to know what's accounting for this sharp rise of inflation.
So the figure we just gave, that's the head-on inflation. That's the general level price levels of goods and services. So whether it being housing, transport, fuel, or anything, the price levels have gone up by 19% if you should compare March this year to March last year. But if you look at some of the drivers of inflation, for instance, if you talk about transport inflation rate, if you compare March this year to March last year, has gone up by 27.6%. This means that it's more than the 90% head-on inflation we are talking about. You should also look at food and non-alcoholic beverages. It has gone up by 22.4%. And then housing, water, and electricity also going up more than 20%. So that's what. So the next slide, which talks about the trend in terms of year-on-year non-food inflation. So I just want you to focus on this. Just look at this.
On this timeline. Try and make it simple for us.
Absolutely. So let's look at...
It's not too friendly.
Last year, January to March last year. You could just look at...
You mean the green timeline?
Exactly, the green timeline. That's food inflation. Okay. So you can see that rise from last year, January to March, food inflation was dropping. It dropped from 14.1% to 12.8%, then to 12.3%, and further deep to 6.5%. That was a single digit.
Right.
Now, if you should compare that same period to what we have now, just see the skyrocketing figures, a stratospheric rise from 12.8% to 14, 17, and now 22.4%, meaning that the food inflation we have at the moment is more than the head-on inflation, which is 19.4%.
So basically, it will cost you more, for instance, to purchase the food items. And also some other products.
Yeah, simply put, the price of food has gone up by 19%. If you compare March this year to March last year.
Yeah.
But let's look at the regional breakdown. Let's look at the map.
Right.
The map, yeah.
Okay.
So if you look at the map, you realize that overall inflation, the region leading is the Brong-Ahafo region. Brong-Ahafo's, overall inflation is around 23.1%. And then followed by the by Northern region, which is 22%. The Greater Accra is having an overall inflation of 21.7%. But if you should focus on food inflation, Upper West region, it means that if you should compare the period March 2022 to March last year, Upper West region food prices have gone up more than 34% in the Upper West region, and in the Greater Accra region, 24%. So if you should consider all of this, most of them are above the average of 22% that we spoke about when it comes to food inflation, and we also have one for non-food inflation. But we can also talk about imported and local goods.
Products.
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at imported goods, inflation is lower than what we produce locally. So the previous slide. So if you look at imported goods, for instance, inflation March this year is 17.3%. But if you should look at locally produced goods, it is 20%.
So if you're buying a foreign item, that would even cost you less.
Exactly. It means that the foreign goods we have in the system, the price levels haven't really gone up if you compare it to...
And that's going to even pose more threats to Ghanaian businesses, for instance.
Exactly.
Who are already grappling with the challenges of COVID, moving out of the situation, and all of that.
Cost of production and other things.
Cost of production may go up, and they're not guaranteed of the market because inflation.
But possibly, maybe in the next months, we may see imported goods also having a high inflation because of this Ukraine-Russia tensions. Already we are feeling the pinch when it comes to maize, and then, cereals in general, because Russia and Ukraine, they are...
So you're predicting that the situation will not get better?
The situation may get worse if this Ukraine-Russia war should persist, Blessed.
Isaac Ajay, I'm grateful that you've been able to give us the latest, but we're also keeping our eyes on the health sector. Don't forget about that, because the National Health Insurance Authority has been speaking about how they intend to change the health delivery system. We'll get to all of that for you shortly. But first, we've been on the streets as well, assessing how some Ghanaians are bearing the brunt of what's happening to the Ghanaian economy. Well, we can now shift focus. Let's talk about the health sector. The National Health Insurance Authority says it is taking steps to settle all outstanding claims owed service providers. The assurance follows claims by the minority in Parliament that the National Health Insurance Service providers may withdraw their services due to the non-payment of levies by the Finance Ministry collected since July 2021. Already, the NHIS is grappling with the challenge of fraudulent claims, which is said to be affecting the cost of operation. However, addressing the press today on measures being taken to improve healthcare delivery, Chief Executive Officer of the National Health Insurance Authority, Dr. Lydia Jani Salisbury, says the scheme is sustainable and that steps will be taken to consolidate the gains.
Yeah, sustainable. This scheme, I don't care what anybody says, is one of the best designed schemes, health insurance schemes in the world. However, as typically faces Ghana, we set up a good plan and then we don't follow our own plan. And I think we have some implementation challenges. As I said, we pay about 90 to 95 million a month cedis for claims. And this is new Ghana cedis, not old Ghana cedis. And we have just paid August 2021, and we have received Some people have brought their Januaries, but the bulk are December. So 4 months times 90 million. Let's say about 360 million plus. That doesn't include those who haven't brought their claims in yet and things like that. Yeah. We put a few people in prison, which is the figures. The one I was personally involved in stemmed from 2009, and in those days it was 500,000 cedis. The person was jailed, I think, in about 2016 for 10 years. I think his assets are being sold or auctioned or whatever to give us back the money. 500,000 now is not worth what it was in those days, but we put in measures that has reduced this. And one of them is this mobile renewal. You know, when you go to the hospital now, the facility, they have a special short code, not the *929, for which they must authenticate every visit. And we give you a code that you put on the claims if the person is a genuine member of the NHIE. At the same time, a message is sent to the member, and it gives you the name of the hospital or clinic that is going to make or claim for money in your name. And because of that, some of the fraudulent claims have gone down.
Well, so that's the assurance coming through from the NHIS, but how do we improve on the state-owned enterprise and to make it more efficient to promote health delivery here in Ghana? Joining us now is Dr. Thomas Anaba, Executive Director for the Africa Center for Health Policy Research and Analysis. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. So here we are, the NHIS is assuring that, well, first of all, claims will be dealt with on time, and then other issues relating to fraudulent claims would also be addressed. Looking at the scheme in itself, how do you think we can first of all improve delivery?
Very much. I think it's not the scheme, it's the service providers, how we should make sure they are able to provide quality. The scheme is well crafted, the act is properly looked at, it was well designed. The problem is the disbursement of funds, because no hospital would like to provide services that are not of quality, that are challenging, that would not inure to the benefit of the patient. They sometimes have to do what they have simply because the NHI is owing a lot of facilities huge sums of money. Just heard the chief executive complaining that 500,000 some years ago is not worth what it was. The hospital 6 months of his money. Just do that. Today you want to pay him, he has several thousands from that money. So it is up to the scheme. Well, the most important thing we should do to the scheme now is that we give the scheme the money it deserves and the money that is accrued to taxes. You can have over 2 billion as taxes paid for as a levy for national health insurance. Total sum of 170 something million.
Dr. Anaba, we're having challenges hearing you. If you could just address that for us. But then you're talking about ensuring that we scale up the funding that's provided NHIS. But the point is, how about, first of all, making use of what they have? The indication we're getting from management is that, well, they're trying to expand their services and also make use of what they have. But then you're saying we should pay attention to the finance ministry and those in charge of the government kitty. Why?
They're relegating one of their functions. And ordinary people pay for it to be given to them to work because they are handicapped as a result of lack of funds are not able to deal adequately with the service providers. This is to client or turn clients away, or clients have to pay right away. Cardinal duties is to ensure they get money from the finance minister, and that is what they are not doing. That is what some of us that we are shortchanging we Ghanaians. We pass a law that will all contribute into a pool that will help to mitigate what we call provide some financial risk protection
Well, yet again, we're losing you, Dr. Anaba, but let's touch on the issue of the claims. How do we make it more efficient? And I'm hoping that this time around your connection will be much better. But how do we deal with the issue of the claims, ensuring that it's timely, and also dealing with fraud, which is sometimes crippling the system?
Analyze the system and make sure that every hospital use a digital platform for this patient.
Well, we seem to have lost Dr. Thomas Anaba again. It appears that the lines are not favorable. Dr. Anaba, well, we'll try and raise you on the phone lines, but what we are looking at is the NHIS, obviously, the fact that government is attempting, and also the service itself is attempting to improve on its services. But Dr. Anaba, let's try one more time. You are on with us. Let's see if we can hear you clearly. Okay, we'll try and reconnect to Dr. Anaba later on, but the First Lady, Rebecca Akufo-Addo, has also been speaking as well. She's described as worrying the increasing number of childhood cancer cases in the country. According to Globocan, nearly 66% of cancer patients died in 2020 alone. Speaking at the International Strategic Dialogue on Non-Communicable Diseases and the Sustainable Development Goals, the First Lady is therefore suggesting that the inclusion of all cancers to NHI packages must be done to reduce mortality cases, while also prioritizing the health of personnel and also encouraging the general populace to adopt healthy lifestyles.
20 non-communicable diseases, NCDs, were responsible for more than 40% of all deaths across the African continent. Speaking at the International Strategic Dialogue on NCDs and the Sustainable Development Goals, WHO Regional Director for Africa, Dr. Matshidiso Moeti, said urgent steps need to be taken to save the situation.
NCDs pose, with each passing year, a greater threat to the health and lives of African people and the continent's socio-economic development. In 1990, NCDs and injuries were responsible for 28%, so just over a quarter, of illness and just over a third of deaths in sub-Saharan Africa. In 2020, they caused over half the deaths in almost 10 countries and between 40 and just under 50% in 17 more countries, with many occurring at a much younger age than in other parts of the world. Thus, the region faces a double burden with communicable diseases. Decisive action to address the determinants and the risk factors of NCDs needs to be scaled up and speeded up.
In response to the growing content of NCD burden across the globe, Presidential Advisor on Health, Dr. Anthony Nsia Asare, who represented the president, said a number of interventions have been developed to address the phenomenon, including the National Non-Communicable Disease Policy for the next 5 years.
Data from the NCD program of the Ghana Health Service indicates that, on the average, 1 out of every 5 patients who visited the outpatient department was diagnosed with one form of NCD or the other. In fact, 16.7% of OPD attendees in 2017 were diagnosed with NCD, and 19.7% in 2021 with hypertension, diabetes mellitus, road traffic accidents, asthma, stroke, depression, breast cancer, and cervical cancer, accounting for most recorded NCDs in the last 5 years. There has been a lot of country-led initiatives in the past towards reducing the impact of NCDs, which have yielded varied levels of success. If the current burden is anything to go by, it is obvious that we must augment our collective and individual efforts at reversing the trend, which could threaten our national development. It is in this light that the government, through the Ministry of Health and its agencies, in collaboration with ministries, departments, and agencies, and with support from development partners, have revised in relevance to our current context the National Non-Communicable Disease Policy, NNCDP 2022, with the accompanying strategy for prevention and control of non-communicable diseases 2022 to 2026. This policy framework will provide the direction and guidance for all NCD interventions in the country and is perfectly aligned to the overarching policy framework for health.
Cancer, also considered one of several diseases under NCDs, killed more than 6,000 people in Ghana in 2020. The First Lady, Rebecca Akufo-Addo, says, although positive steps have been taken against childhood cancers, the absorption of all cancers under the National Health Insurance Scheme will be a major boost in the fight against NCDs.
In 2020, Globocan estimated that there were over 24,000 new cancer cases in Ghana, leading to nearly 16,000 deaths. This means 66% of people diagnosed with cancer died. This is a green picture. The major contributors to this picture are the two leading female cancers, breast and cervical cancers, and prostate cancer in men. Again, childhood cancers seem to be on the rise. Is it a case of better patronage because of better awareness? I don't know. But what I do know is that it is a worrying phenomenon which needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. Currently, access to medicines, diagnostics, and treatment of cancers in Ghana are fraught with some challenges. These include lack of awareness of the disease, late disease presentation and diagnosis, cost of treatment, and inadequate qualified personnel and infrastructure. This is a major step in combating cancers successfully. We also need to encourage better lifestyle choices. There must be a concerted campaign on dietary choices and the uptake of regular physical activities. Another factor that should be considered as a matter of urgency is the training of health personnel to ensure early diagnosis and prompt treatment. For most cancer patients, the cost of treatment is a deterrent to seeking medical help. Recently, our advocacy paid off with the inclusion of 4 childhood cancers to the National Health Insurance Scheme benefits package. Maybe it is time to consider the expansion to include all cancers. This will without doubt change the health-seeking behavior of Ghanaians.
Michael Ashale's report for JoyNews.
Well, so Dr. Thomas Anaba is still with us. Earlier, we're having some challenges with the connection. Dr. Anaba, you were making the point about, improving that aspect of NHI, and also just feeding into this report as well issues about cancer as well and some other chronic diseases that we're supposed to be considering when it comes to the NHIS. How do we go about that?
I think, as I was saying, to improve upon the systems of NHIS payment system as well as dealing with the fraud, what we need to do is to automate the whole system, make sure every facility has a digital platform upon which it should work with its folders, linking this to the National Health Insurance, linking this to the claims, so that any case that you see is quickly sent to the National Health Insurance Authority for vetting and approval, and then information sent to the client, just like some of the private health insurance have. In that way, we'll be able to control and minimize what is the fraudulent way people may be sending claims for work that they have not done. And besides that, it will also speed up the time for reimbursement so that facilities can work very, very quickly. Yeah, talking about non-communicable, Ghana, we need to adopt what we call preemptive measures towards this through education and also making available as avenues for people into our various hospitals at least a year to do some checkup on their own, even if it is to be covered by National Health Insurance. At least most of the people who really suffer these non-communicable diseases are the elderly. Most of them they have less money to pay for their services. I'm not talking about children, but majority of the major cancers are suffered by the elderly and women. So we think that some special consideration can be made to set groups of people in terms of some of those sicknesses so that it can be covered. Not only this, but hospitals, especially government hospitals, should be provided with the needed resources to quickly diagnose such diseases, give treatment, and give medications so that those people do not suffer the consequences of having to die because they don't have resources to be diagnosed of their ailment. If you check northern Ghana, we don't even have a cancer center. We don't have a cancer center. So how many people are going to get their prostate cancer diagnosed, get their breast cancer diagnosed? Even common mammography we don't have. So it is up to government to also resource facilities with the needed equipment, include those things, those illnesses into the National Health Insurance package, because the health insurance, as the CEO said, has a lot of money. It's one of the best in the world. It accumulates a lot of money, just that it doesn't go to them. If the money really goes to them, they'll be able to take care of these diseases. So up to government to up the game of education about communicable diseases, provide the needed resources, and pay hospitals in time to continue taking care of people.
Do we consider laws in that regard?
Come again?
Do we consider framing a law in that regard?
I think it is just to upgrade what the National Health Insurance has already. It should be a policy under the National Health Insurance that these ailments should be added to it, just like they've been able to add childhood cancer to it. They can add other cancers to it, because the old man with 70 years is no more on salary, he's on pension, he can't get money to pay for a scan, he can't get money to pay for his surgery, he can't get money to pay for any chemotherapy or radiotherapy. Just like many women who are single mothers, they can't get money to even do a mammography. How do they diagnose? So I think that they can just incorporate that into it and provide it. Then we don't need to create more things. We just have to tweak the law or add those services into it so that facilities can provide it.
Dr. Thomas Anaba, thank you for making time for us. Now let's take you elsewhere. Russia's brutal war in Ukraine is grinding on. Russian forces are zeroing in on the southern eastern parts of the country, which they've already pounded for weeks, likely killing thousands of civilians. NATO and European allies are debating now and how to actually keep the pressure on Vladimir Putin. And for the latest on their efforts, let's turn now to William Glucroft, who's our correspondent with our partners Deutsche Welle in Berlin. So let's get the very latest from you. EU foreign ministers, as we understand, met earlier this week. What came out of that session in Luxembourg?
Well, there was a lot of solidarity for Ukraine and intent to keep the pressure on Vladimir Putin and prevent his war of aggression in Ukraine. But there wasn't a lot of substantive details to come out of that foreign ministers meeting in Luxembourg. There's talk of a sixth round of sanctions from the EU against Russian assets. But the question is, what exactly? There's a lot of pressure to put more sanctions, or sweeping sanctions, on all Russian banks. And of course, the big question is oil and gas. Is there really going to be an EU embargo of oil and gas, which I remind your viewers is extremely, extremely important here in the EU. Something like 40% of the EU's natural gas is from Russia. Now, there is a lot of support and growing support for those kinds of moves, very serious moves, but Germany is still something of a stick in the mud, one of a few countries, along with Hungary and some other EU members, that are still trying to hold back against the most punishing of sanctions that the EU so far hasn't signed up to.
Let's talk about the German officials as well. They seem to be at odds with one another over how much to help Ukraine. What seems to be the main disagreement there?
Well, again, weapons and oil gas. These are the two big sticking points right now, and pressure is mounting, even within the government itself here in Germany, to flip that switch, so to speak, to go a full embargo of oil and gas, and to deliver Ukraine not just defensive weapons, which are things like anti-aircraft guns and missile defense, these sorts of things, and ammunition, but also heavy weapons like tanks and fighter jets. There is an offer on the table from a major German manufacturer to deliver older tanks immediately, as many as 50 that could be delivered within a few weeks' time. That would need the approval of the German government. Annalena Baerbock, the German foreign minister, has come out in favor of such a move, delivering those kinds of heavy weapons. Her boss, Olaf Scholz, the chancellor, he's a little more circumspect. And he's been getting heavily criticized for dragging his feet on making these kinds of big decisions, both on oil and gas and on major weapons deliveries. And you're hearing more and more voices within the German government and within the opposition saying it's time to make those kinds of decisions.
And tell us more about this. How are officials there responding to fears of the use of chemical weapons?
As we've been hearing, there's so far been no confirmed reports that chemical weapons were actually used, although U.S. and U.K. investigators say they are looking into it to see if there's any actual evidence of the claims from earlier this week. But there's still a lot of fear that chemical weapons could be used. Vladimir Putin and his allies have hinted at such action. So there's of course a history, a precedence of Russia using or condoning chemical weapons, such as in Syria. So there is a lot of fear, especially as this war gets more and more desperate and more brutal. And we've seen all of the setbacks that Russia has had and the major losses that Russia has incurred, that it may actually turn to using chemical weapons. What happens then is really uncharted territories. The United Kingdom, for example, has said all options are on the table if Russia uses chemical weapons. But what that means exactly is unclear, because NATO has made very clear that they will not engage directly with Russia. So what kind of hard power tools that NATO or individual NATO members have to really confront Russia should chemical weapons be used is really a frightening and very uncharted area in which we may be going. But again, there have been no confirmed reports that that is yet the case.
Glucroft with our partners, the DW, thank you for giving us the latest. We'll return with more, particularly in the world of sports. Stay with us here on The Pulse. My name is Blessed Sogah. Don't forget that you can get more updates on our stories that we brought you here on The Pulse. That should be at myjoyonline.com. You have all of the latest stories there. But until then, we'll see you same time tomorrow.